We are live. We are live. You have joined us on the Blue Plate Special. I'm Andy Andrews, and we are live. Here at Wisdom Harbor Studios in Orange Beach, Alabama, at the Wharf. Yes, the Wharf. Our electricity went off a little while ago, and we were wondering if we were going to get it back on for the show, but we do. Either that or they have the hamsters down there in the wheel rolling the generators so that we can broadcast to you all over the country. Okay, first things first. We have an awesome bunch in the studio today. So glad you guys are here. Rachel and Larry Davidson from Gulf Shores. Hey. And Lynn Link and Jim Meyer from Gulf Shores. Good to see you both again. So good to see y'all again. We missed each other the other day, but we talked in the parking deck out there. Yep. And Jack and Drew Jackson from Pensacola. Hey, all right. So, people, it's funny that people tell me that, we always go to Pensacola for vacation, not to Orange Beach. I'm like, it's the same beach. And then Larry and Dina Clark, locals. That's good. Dan Furman from North Carolina. You are not a local. You're a Yankee to us. North Carolina. Oh my gosh. Heather Olson. We are going to have a wonderful day. Thank you for sharing in Utah. If this is your first time, if you're just joining us and you're on Facebook, please click that notification button. Oh, I still have this. You didn't even tell me I had this, blood thing on.
I thought maybe it needed to stay on.
You could ask instead of, having me embarrassed.
Well, I didn't see until you're in front of the camera, and by then it's too late.
Oh, okay. Well, I did, blood work this morning, so I let the vampires have at my arm. What was I even talking about before I noticed I had, accoutrements? If you're joining us on Facebook, click that notification button and make sure you turn the notifications on your phone. That way, anytime we go live here at Wisdom Harbor Studios, you will be notified. Also, if you could share to your page. We've got a great show today. We're going to be doing a show today called Words You Might Be Mispronouncing. Yep. Yeah, I got Miss Polly, my wife. The boys call her the grammar Nazi, involved in this today. And speaking of my wife, who might be watching, she tells me, make sure you take that cough drop out of your mouth before you do the show. So, okay, dear, it's out, and all the coughs are on you. She tells me too, sometimes she says, don't blow your nose on stage. I'm like, what, am I just supposed to drip? I don't know what to do. Okay, who else? Ron Reams. Hey, Ron Reams. From Ron Reams, Mobile Radio. Marcia Carlson Taylor. Hey, Pascal Washington. Did you love the podcast this morning? Okay. Listen, Cliff Sims, that's what it comes out. The Professional Noticer comes out every Tuesday morning, and we try our best to have just awesome people on and awesome guests, talk all over. And man, Cliff Sims this week. And if you don't know who Cliff Sims is, have you seen that commercial about the most interesting man in the world? Okay, well, it's not the guy on the commercial. It's really Cliff. Okay, he's the most interesting man in the world. I look at him askance because he's 36 years old, And he has already been, he's played college basketball. He toured as the lead singer for a band that was on the radio and did videos on MTV. He, what else? I'm just trying to line this up in my mind. He is the founder of Yellowhammer News, which is it's a conglomerate. That's what it is, and he's the founder of it. And then he was the communications director for the White House, and had his for 500 days. Had his office was the one next to the Oval one, and he's from Alabama, and then Cliff Sims came back to Birmingham and founded Telegraph Creative, which he is the CEO of Telegraph Creative. But then he went back to Washington and worked for a couple of years as Deputy Director of National Intelligence, the second in charge over 13 national intelligence organizations. He's 36. And so anyway, he's our guest this week on the Professional Noticer. George Kosser. You like the shirt? Fish Hippie. Yep. Fish Hippie is, this is one of the brands that they have down at the Sand Dollar Lifestyles, which is the cornerstone of the Wharf. This is a huge store down there. They have millions of shirts. They have Kamado Joe grills. They have shoes. They have purses, if you like purses. And, they have everything, but they are great. And if you come down and visit us, you got to visit them and tell them we sent you. Mike Jakubik's on here. Mike got in. What? Polly says disgusting. What could she be talking about? Those coughs are all yours, dear. I'm having a hard time, dear. My sister is watching. How about that? I mean, if you can get your sister to watch, you got to be doing something good, I guess. Either that or she's finally watching because I'm paying her. Do you know, Christy, why did you say that's where our mom was born, Florala? Did I miss something? Did I miss that? Fontaine Seal says, I love Florala, Alabama. Do you know that Leslie Ann Tarabella was born in Florala, too? And Leslie she's one of our guests on the Professional Noticer and here on the Blue Plate, and she's a writer. She's awesome. Tammy Nance, hey. Yeah. Tammy says, I'm guessing wharf is one of the words I'll be discussing today about mispronouncing. Yes. Well, that's a chosen mispronunciation. Wharf. I just think, it's like sword, if I was Zorro, I'd whoop out my magic sword and stick him in the butt. That just sounds better. It just sounds better. David Orr. David and Becky Orr. We're so glad y'all are here. Do you know David Orr scared me to death when I was like 3 years old? Here I am, a full-grown person. And my earliest memory is of David Orr. Because when I was 2 years old, I got a call from the Easter Bunny, and it was David Orr. And then on Halloween, a couple of years later, David Orr and two of his buddies came to the door, and Mom and Daddy let me open the door, and they were standing there in white tuxes with green faces and hair and teeth. I mean, I almost wasn't here. Because he almost scared me to death. James Lewis, this is your first live Blue Plate special. Man, we're glad to have you here. We're glad to have you here. Hey, we're recording a podcast today with Tiffany King. She's Eat at Home Cooks. And so at 4 p.m., we'll be recording a podcast live here. So if you want to come in and watch yesterday, we need to tell you guys when we are recording podcasts. Yesterday, Rick and Bubba were here, and we recorded a podcast with Rick and Bubba, which that's two crazy guys. So anyway, and Jakubik says, wow, you're poking the bear today. Very impressive. And Polly says, please let him have his cough drops. No, Ron Reams is saying, Polly, please let him have his cough drops. Beats listening to him cough. I know, Ron. I had to give up my cough. Totally Polly's fault. Okay, you ready to get into it? Words you might be mispronouncing. Now, don't get upset. Don't be embarrassed. We all mispronounce words. And I put one on the list that I mispronounced, and I'll tell you when we get to it. And we'll do this, for all intensive purposes, this is just a good list of mispronounced words. Because you hear what I did? The phrase is for all intents and purposes. The phrase is not for all intensive purposes. But I hear that occasionally, for all intensive purposes, but it's intense and purpose, or all intents and purposes. But if you want to use for all intensive purposes in a sentence, if you want to use for all intensive, it would be for all intensive purposes, we will keep him in the surgical unit overnight. That's for intensive purposes. Okay, Juice DeWitt says, we got the pitchforks and torches ready. Yep, okay. All right, here's one. The proper phrase is a case in point. But occasionally we will hear somebody say a case and point. Now, if you wanted to use case and point instead of case and point, and you wanted to use case and point correctly, you'd have to use it like this. I have individual containers for each arrowhead. That way I can package each case and point. That's the way to use that. So, what do you think? Pretty good? Yeah, okay. All right. The word is vehement. She was vehement in her. Right? But I occasionally hear vehement. And I've heard people, it's just like right to my, they say, I am vehement about this. And it's all I can do not to say, are you really? How vehement are you? But, and I don't know how to describe people who would use vehement. Maybe they're from New Orleans, a place that gets mispronounced quite often. The name of the city is New Orleans. I hear it get pronounced a lot. I hear it get pronounced New Orleans. But isn't it odd when you think about it? Isn't it odd that the correct pronunciation of a major city in the United States, New Orleans, is that the correct pronunciation is right in the middle of two incorrect pronunciations. One, here's New Orleans in the middle, and then one is used by tourists, New Orleans, and the other is used by the locals that live in New Orleans who call it Nolans. I mean, right? I mean, tourists and the people that live there mispronounce. So I can say that here at the Wharf, we are probably the only place in America that is pronouncing the name of that city correctly. So now here's one that may fool you. Do you know the color mauve? You know, the mispronunciation is what we have been saying for years. Mauve is not, that's not a color. The pronunciation is mauve with a long O. And it was the very first synthetic color. And so when somebody creates a color, I guess they get to say how to pronounce it. And you're looking me up, aren't you? You're checking me. It's like, I don't believe it. Mauve. Mauve. I've said mauve all my life. I have too, actually. I have. But when somebody, it's like, the GIFs or the GIFs, right? Okay. We were talking about that yesterday. Those are those little animated things that people put on their, that people like Little M, Gen Zs put it on their texts but nobody seems to know whether to call it GIF or GIF. It's GIF and it's GIF or GIF, but the guy who created it says it's GIF. So we're going with GIF. Now, I want you to know that in February, we will be wishing you a happy Valentine's Day with an N in the middle and an N at the end. A Valentine. It ain't Valentine's Day. It's not Valentine's Day. If I am near my wife and she hears that, she starts swinging. I mean, the grammar Nazi is out of control when somebody says, Valentine's Day. It's Cupid's arrow. It's not Cupid's sparrow. Okay, Cupid had an arrow. He didn't have a sparrow. Cupid's arrow, not Cupid's sparrow. Now here's one that's probably used a lot, and that is dilate. We will often hear people say it dilate, but there's no A before the L. The A is after the L. It's dilate, not dilate. 2 syllables, not 3. Heather Olson says exclamation point or exclamation mark. I believe it's an exclamation mark, not an exclamation point. I almost mispronounced the word explanation though when I was pointing out that it was mark. Okay, now here's one that this is probably the one that gets me on a regular basis more than any other. Now, if you kind people in the studio will look over to my right, to your left, you will see a display case with memorabilia from the Andy Griffith Show. We have here on display, we have Aunt Bee's pearls, we have what's left of Aunt Bee's china, we have Floyd's shaving brush, we have an oil can from Wally's gas station, We have Helen Crump's stapler, a stamp dispenser from Barney's desk. We have the dominoes that Andy and Barney played with. We have the telephone from the Taylor's Living Room, season 1. We have the telephone that was in the Taylor's Living Room, season 2, 3, 4, and 5. We have the telephone from Wally's gas station, and one of the telephones that was used in the courthouse, when Barney was going, Nita, Juanita. And so you'll notice that this is memorabilia from the Andy Griffith show, Griffith. Griffith. His name ain't Andy Griffin. Okay, don't come around me and say Griffin. I don't know who Andy Griffin is. For goodness sake, this is one of only 3 shows. And it's the best show in the history of television. Don't even argue with me on that. But it's only one of 3 shows in the history of television that when it went off the air, it was still number 1. The show started 62 years ago. All right, 62 years ago. And last year, get this, last year it managed to clock 36.9 billion minutes of viewing in America, which is enough to make it come in, if you take all the shows that are on the air now, 500 channels, or however many channels there are, and if you take all the television shows that are on now and just take this show that is decades old, the number of views would have it come in at number 60, which is enough to keep it on the air today. So, isn't that amazing? Oh, what? Pastor Johnny Hunt will disagree with me on Valentine's. He's probably the one who changed it to Valentine's. I'll get Johnny Hunt. I got one of his buddies coming in tomorrow. So, what do you think about that, Michael Catt? Valentine's? Valentine's. Don't say Valentine's. There is no Valentine's and no Andy Griffin. And you're right, Pat Davis Jones. There's no such word as height. It's height. Okay, here's one. The word is miniature. Now, in the South, a lot of people say miniature. Miniature. But it's miniature. Here's a big one. Tammy Nat says nuclear versus nuclear. We had a president that said nuclear. Here's one. I couldn't care less is correct. But you hear people say, I could care less. It's not I could care less. If you want to use I could care less, the proper way to use it would be I could care less, but I choose to stay with this particular level of caring. I could care less, but I choose to stay with this particular level. But if you couldn't care less, there is no deeper you could go. Shane Stockton Brooks, and my dad always said frustrated. Yeah, I've heard that. Frustrated. Which reminds me of another one that's not on the list. Supposedly ain't a word. Supposedly ain't a word. Ain't is a word. Ain't is in the dictionary. Tammy Nat says Alzheimer's is another one that you hear mispronounced. It's not old-timers, right? It's Alzheimer's. And Tammy, you've already texted us that 3 times, just to tell you. There is realtor. Oh, you like that? You get that? Yeah, okay. They're laughing at. All right, so realtor is the correct pronunciation. He is a realtor. He's not a realtor. A realtor. But I hear that a lot. Do you guys hear that? A realtor? He's a realtor. She's a big realtor. She's big in real estate. She's a big realtor. Okay. Yeah, this is good. This is good. Jacques Cardin says, all of a sudden. It's not all of the sudden. It's either suddenly or it's all of a sudden. Very good. That's very good. Heather Olson says another one she hears a lot in Utah is crick in place of a creek. I've heard that too. A crick. But that may be a colloquial thing. Do you reckon? I guess reckon might be a colloquial thing. Marcy Crosser Taylor says she also hates irregardless. Well, irregardless, we can't say that that's being mispronounced because irregardless is not a word. Jessica Hale, oh my God, I love you right now. I could do an entire show on this topic. Well, you just need to go sit with my wife and you guys can be the grammar Nazis together. Debbie Whitson says, my grandma always said aeroport and aeroplane. I've heard that. You know, Polly's mother was from Mississippi, but we always thought she was from Boston because she put an R on everything like the Kennedys did. Kevin and Glenda would be Kevin and Glender. Jerry and Katrina would be Jerry and Katrina. And would you open the window? So that's Mississippi and Boston, I think. Fontaine Steel Tabor, what about veterinarian? Yep, that's a good one. It is a veterinarian. It's not veterinarian. George P. Coster says asterisk versus asterisk. Yeah, and etc. Instead of etc. I mean, that sounds like a headache remedy, doesn't it? Etc. Could I have a couple of etc.? I've got a bad headache. Fiscal and physical. Our next door neighbor, when I was growing up, she would say physical. Our company's physical year ends coming up next week. Our physical year. Stan Wiggins. Hi, Andy. Loving the show as always, but I think when the weather clears up, I may want to go shop for some jewelry. Some jewelry. Yeah. Let's see. Oh. Now we're not going to get into North and South because that's a show all of its own. That's a show. We can do that show. Mike Jakubik's on here. My wife is on here. And Mike, he gives Polly utter hell about the way she talks. Because, and Mike says, oh my God, Mike and Lynn are from Chicago. And so when they live in Arizona now, and Mike says, oh my God, when we go back, either the kids say, why is Mom talking that way? And Lynn will be like, get the dog in. That's Miss Polly. Oh, a dog. Okay. But we'll do that north-south thing at some show. Here's one. The light stuff that is like ice cream that you eat after you have your tonsils taken out is sherbet. has one R, not two. It's not sherbet. Sherbet. But if you wanted to use sherbet correctly, it would be, why, sherbet, we can get your car towed within the hour. So that would be proper pronunciation. Karen Ward, pecan or pecan? The folks who raise them say pecan. Now that's true. Okay, that's true. The folks who raise them say pecan. But in South Carolina, they say pecan. And of course, their argument, which is a pretty good one, is they say it's pecan, not pecan. You don't call it a peanut, do you? I think that's a pretty good argument, but I still say pecan. Holly Hale Smith says get and get. That's right. And how about this one? How about salmon is the correct pronunciation because the L is silent. It is not salmon, it's salmon. Have you noticed how many people say anyways? But so anyways, as I was saying, anyways, it's anyway, not anyways. Now here's one that I hear a lot of people will blow this one. The word is often. The T is silent. It is not often. It's often. But if you wanted to use often, in a sense, you could say from I-65 south of Mobile, you'll run into I-10. Go east and off 10, take Bucky's exit. Off 10. Okay. Mike Williams, my daddy said a pecan is what he kept by the bed growing up. That's great. That is great. You know, I just thought of another mispronunciation. Jen Andrews. She says her fiance always says Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire. You know, that name, I mean, have you ever looked at the ingredients in Worcestershire sauce? Now I can't even say it. And Worcestershire sauce, have you ever looked at the ingredients? I mean, this stuff like bubbles alone for a long time. It has anchovies in it and everything. And they didn't know what to call it because they mixed it up and it just wasn't any good. And so they just kind of put it aside for a couple of years and they were figuring out what to throw away. And one guy tasted it and he goes, "What's this here sauce?" And that's how I got his name. What's this here sauce? Now here's the word that I mispronounced. When I was reading Just Jones, I wrote the word, and Gabe Wicks, who is the head of Harper Audio, Gabe, he's a grammar Nazi too, and you know, evidently I can write them and can't pronounce them, but I said the word. I was talking about Ollie, and I said he was mischievous. And Gabe said, I think that's mischievous. And he is right. The word is not mischievous, it's mischievous. But I tend toward mischievous. I tend toward saying it wrong. I don't know. There's one that I wanted to show you that I actually caught. I just forgot about it until now, but I actually caught this during the Alabama game Saturday, and this is just amazing to me that CBS, stupid CBS, would actually get this wrong. Okay, I'll show you in just a second. But let me just, because I know Polly is chomping at the bit right now, because this is the one she just really wanted me to talk about and tell people don't do this because it just makes her skin crawl. And that the word, it is 3 words: especially, escape, and espresso. And Polly would like you all to know it is not especially, it is not escape, and it is not espresso. It is especially, escape, espresso. X out the X. Okay. Now, this is, and I'm hoping that Matt can get on this. This is was during the Alabama game, and this is CBS, and they were talking about Bryce Young, and his hometown is Pasadena, California, and he's got 7. At that time, he had 7 passing touchdowns in his first 2 starts, and they called that. Can you get that, Matt?
Let me see if I can zoom in. Let's see. Oh, that's as far as it goes.
They called that. So you can't see that? Can I get in front of it? Can I?
Yep.
Okay, let me just come right over here.
Hold on, let me focus it. There we go. All right, you can see that.
It is not uncharted territory. It is uncharted territory. CBS, uncharted territory. You know, good grief. It's like I watch, I listen to Audible, and I wonder, I mean, I know I'm stupid, and I know I can't say mischievous. But Gabe Wicks is sitting in here with me to tell me when I mispronounce a word. And how in the world are these guys doing these books up there? And I mean, James Lee Burke has 25 Dave Robichaux novels set down in New Iberia Parish in Louisiana. James Lee Burke lives in New Iberia. And there is a famous Hollywood actor that is narrating 25 Dave Robichaux novels, and in 25 of them, he says pirogue for a pirogue, and he says bass and bream instead of bass and brim. What? That drives me crazy. That specifically drives me crazy, not pacifically. It doesn't pacifically drive me crazy. But I hear people say pacifically. Now, if you want to use that correctly, you could say pacifically, Hawaii is right about in the middle. And that would be correct. The name of the place is Chicago. It is not Chicago. Chicago, not Chicago. And the state that Chicago is Illinois. It is not Illinois. Nobody lives in Chicago, Illinois. But I heard a guy introduced that way. I heard Paul Harvey introduced that way one time from the stage. the MC from Chicago, Illinois. And I bet Paul Harvey was going, I bet he wanted to say good day and get out of there after that. Marcia Hilligeist says, I'm a total narration snob. When you hear good narrators, it's distracting to hear others that aren't so good. And she says, I'm a good narrator, thanks to Gabe. That's exactly right, thanks to Gabe. Okay, here is, I think this is the last one. Is this the last one? Is this the last one? Okay, here's the last one. This one is hilarious to me, and I actually love hearing this pronunciation. It's the state Hawaii. It is not how are you. Now, my grandmother pronounced it, how are you? Nana, it is not, how are you? And Nana owned a beauty shop, and Granddaddy was deaf. And so Nana not only talked over the dryers all day, she went home and talked to Granddaddy at night. And so everything Nana said was at about, 100,000 decibels, Honey, didn't you go to How Are You last year? It's like, oh. But if you wanted to use How Are You in a correct manner, it could be done like this. Do you know the Warrior family? I've invited the twins to dinner. There's Jonathan Warrior and his sister. She's married now, Trudy Warrior Robinson. Oh, here he comes now. Hi, Warrior. That would work. That would work. But that's the only way that's going to work. Okay? Just, hi, Warrior. All right. Well, we have had a good time making fun of everybody, including me, today. And Polly Andrews says, thank you, no X. Honey, listen, I did this show just for you, okay? And so it's 1 o'clock here now. And so I think Matt and SB and Matt Jack, Little M, and I probably going to go down to Southern Grind and have an espresso. And, an espresso, dear, is especially fine mid-afternoon because we'll escape from here around 5. I'll see you at home. Love you. Love y'all. Bye-bye.